The night on Orbital Station 4 was calm and quiet. The hum of machines was the only sound in the narrow metal corridors. Rian sat on his small bed, his boots off, his uniform hanging on the wall hook. He had just finished a long shift repairing oxygen pipes in the lower decks. His back hurt, and his arms were sore. All he wanted was a few hours of sleep before the next day began. His living unit was tiny. Just a single room with a bed, a small table, and a wall screen that showed the station news. Outside his door, the hallway was empty, and the lights were dim. Rian leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes for a moment. He thought he might finally rest. Then he heard it. A knock. It was not a normal knock. It was fast, sharp, and repeated 3 times. Rian opened his eyes and frowned. No one came to his door this late. He stood up and walked toward the metal door. For a second, he wondered if he should ignore it. Maybe it was the wrong door. Maybe it was nothing. The knock came again, louder. This time, Rian took a slow breath and pressed the button. The door slid open. What he saw made him freeze. A tall figure stood there, wrapped in a dark cloak. The hood was pulled low over the face, but Rian could see a faint glow beneath the fabric. The glow came from the skin. The figure was shaking, as if cold or afraid. Then the hood slipped back, and Rian saw her. She was not human. Her skin was pale silver, with soft blue lights that moved like tiny rivers under the surface. Her hair was white and smooth like threads of glass. Her eyes were large and bright, shining like crystals. She looked strange and beautiful, but there was fear in those glowing eyes. Before Rian could speak, she stepped inside. Her voice was soft but urgent. "Please, hide me," she whispered. Then she collapsed to the floor. Rian stared at her for a long second. His heart raced. He had never seen an alien like her before. He had worked on the station for 3 years, and he had seen many species: short green traders, tall insect-like workers, even scaled hunters, but never someone like this. She looked fragile and strong at the same time, and now she was lying on his floor, breathing fast. Rian bent down and shook her shoulder gently. "Hey, are you okay? What happened?" Her eyes opened a little, and she looked at him as if trying to speak, but no sound came. Then Rian heard something outside. Heavy steps, boots. He froze. Voices followed the sound of the boots. The words were not in English. They were deep, harsh sounds, like stones scraping metal. Rian moved to the door and pressed his ear against it. The voices were close. He could not understand everything, but he caught one word. It was repeated again and again. "Traitor." Rian turned to the alien woman. She had pushed herself up, on one elbow, her glowing skin dim in the weak light of the room. She looked at him with wide eyes and shook her head slowly, as if telling him not to speak. The footsteps stopped near his door. Rian's chest tightened. He could hear them breathing on the other side. He thought about what to do. If he opened the door, they would see her. If he did nothing, maybe they would leave. The sound of something scanning came next, a soft hum, then a sharp beep. They were checking doors. Rian felt sweat on his neck. The woman looked at him and whispered in a voice so soft he almost did not hear it. "Please." Rian nodded. He grabbed a small blanket from his bed and threw it over her. Then he dragged a metal crate to block the view from the door in case it opened. His heart beat like a drum in his chest. The scanner hummed again. Beep, beep. The sound stopped. The footsteps moved away. Rian waited, holding his breath. Seconds passed like hours. Then the voices faded. The boots grew quiet. He let out the breath slowly and turned to the woman. She was still on the floor, her chest rising and falling fast. "Who are you?" he asked. She did not answer at first. She looked at the door as if making sure the danger had passed. Then her eyes moved to him. They were full of fear and something else. "Trust. My name is Alira," she said finally. Her voice was soft, almost like music. But there was a weight in it. "They will come back." Rian sat on the edge of the bed and rubbed his face. He could not believe what was happening. A few minutes ago, he was thinking about sleep. Now an alien woman was in his room, and soldiers were hunting her. "Why?" he asked. "Why are they after you? Alira closed her eyes for a moment. Then she opened them and said, "Because I did not let them win." Rian stared at her, confused. He wanted to ask more, but he saw the exhaustion on her face. Her body trembled like a wire ready to break. "Okay," he said slowly. "Rest. You are safe here for now." Alira shook her head. "No one is safe." Rian looked at the closed door and thought about the voices outside. Maybe she was right, but for some reason, he could not throw her out. He could not let them take her. He stood and walked to the control panel by the door. He checked the lock and made sure the alarm was on. Then he sat back down, still watching her. Alira lay still on the floor, her silver skin glowing faintly in the dim light. Rian did not know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing. His life had just changed, and there was no going back. The silence in Rian's room did not last long. The faint hum of the station's systems filled the air, but Rian could still hear the echo of those heavy boots in his mind. He kept staring at the door, expecting another knock, another sharp sound that would break the fragile calm. Alira lay on the floor, her glowing skin dim like a fading light. She looked weak, but her eyes stayed open, alert, watching everything. Rian wanted to ask her more questions, but fear kept his mouth closed. For a while, he listened instead, hoping those soldiers had gone far away. After a few long minutes, Rian spoke in a quiet voice. "They were looking for you." Alira moved her head slowly and gave a small nod. Her white hair slid across her shoulder like soft glass threads. She sat up with effort, her arms shaking as she pushed against the metal floor. Rian reached out a hand, careful. She looked at his hand for a second before taking it. Her fingers were cool, almost cold, and smooth like polished stone. He helped her sit on the edge of the bed. "Thank you," she whispered. Rian sat on the chair across from her. "Who are they?" he asked. "The ones outside." Alira's bright eyes flickered toward the door. Her voice was low when she answered. "They are hunters, soldiers of the Dominion." Rian frowned. He had heard the name before. The Dominion was a powerful alien empire that controlled many systems. Most humans on the station knew not to cross them. They ruled with laws that were strict and hard, and they hated rebels. "They called you a traitor," Rian said. Alira looked down at her hands for a moment. She did not speak. Then she raised her head and said, "Because I refused to give them what they wanted." "What was that?" Rian asked. Her eyes locked on his. "They were like deep pools of light. A weapon," she said softly. "A weapon that should never exist." Rian stared at her, not sure he had heard right. A weapon? He wanted to ask more, but the sound of distant boots made him freeze. The noise was faint, but it was there, coming from the hallway again. Alira's head turned fast. Her glowing marks brightened slightly, as if fear made them shine. She stood up, her movements quick and tense. "They are still here," she said in a sharp whisper. "They are searching every room." Rian jumped to his feet. "What? How do you know?" "I can hear their signals," Alira replied, touching a small silver mark near her ear. "They are close." Rian felt his throat go dry. "If they scan the doors, they will find you." Alira looked at him with steady eyes. "If they find me, they will kill me. And you?" The words hit him like cold metal. He had not thought about himself until now. If the Dominion soldiers learned he was hiding her, he would be finished. Humans on the station had no power against the Dominion. One word from those soldiers, and he could vanish into a prison cell or worse. Rian looked at her. She was calm, but he saw the fear in her eyes too. She had run this far because she believed she could survive. "What do we do?" he asked. Alira stepped closer. "Hide me where they cannot look. A place they will not think of." Rian thought. Fast, his room was too small. There was only the bed, the table, and the storage locker. The soldiers would check everything. Then an idea struck him. "The vent," he said. He crossed the room and pulled a panel off the wall. Behind it, a narrow vent ran through the maintenance system. It was not made for people, but it was big enough for her to crawl inside. "Go," Rian said. "Stay there until I tell you." Alira hesitated for a second, then nodded. She moved quickly. sliding into the vent with surprising grace. Rian closed the panel and wiped his hands on his shirt, his heart beating hard. Just in time. A loud knock hit the door. Rian froze, then forced himself to move. He pressed the button and the door slid open. 3 soldiers stood there. They were tall, wearing black armor with silver marks that glowed faintly. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, and strange devices rested on their arms. One of them spoke in that harsh language. Rian could not understand the words, but the tone was sharp, demanding. "I don't understand," Rian said, raising his hand slightly. "English, speak English." The soldier pressed a button on his helmet. His voice came through, deep and cold. "You will answer questions." Rian nodded quickly. Yes, anything." The soldier stepped inside, looking round the small room. Another soldier held a scanner, moving it slowly from the bed to the walls. A soft hum filled the air. Rian tried to keep his breathing steady. His eyes stayed on the floor. "Have you seen anyone unusual?" the first soldier asked. Rian shook his head fast. "No, I just got off work. Came here to sleep." The soldier stared at him for a long moment. Then the scanner beeped. The second soldier checked the screen, then gave a short nod to his leader. The leader looked back at Rian. "If you see her, you will report." Rian swallowed hard. "Yes, of course." The soldier leaned close, his dark visor inches from Rian's face. "If you hide her, you die." Rian felt his heart slam against his ribs, but he kept his voice calm. "I understand." The soldiers stepped out. The door slid shut. Rian stood there for a moment, shaking. He waited until the sound of boots faded down the hall. Then he dropped to his knees and pulled the panel open. Alira slid out of the vent. Like a shadow, her silver skin shining faintly, she looked at him with eyes full of quiet fire. "They will not stop," she said. Rian nodded. "Then we have to get you out of here." Rian closed the panel and leaned against the wall. His hands were still shaking from the soldier's visit. He had never been that close to danger before. If the scanner had picked up anything unusual, his life would have ended right there. Alira stood in the center of the room, silent and still. Her glowing marks were brighter now, like small streams of light running under her skin. Her face looked calm, but her eyes held a storm of fear and strength. "They will not give up," she said quietly. Rian rubbed his face with both hands. "Yeah, I figured that out. They said if I hide you, I die." Alira looked at him, "And yet, you still hit me." Rian gave a weak laugh. "Maybe I'm not smart. Or maybe I don't like people making threats in my home." Her lips curved slightly, but the smile faded fast. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands resting on her knees. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the station filled the silence like a low voice. Finally, Rian asked the question that had been burning in his mind since she appeared. "What is this about? Why are they hunting you? You said something about a weapon." "What weapon?" Alira's eyes lifted to his, and for the first time, he saw something new in them, not just fear. "Guilt. My people created something," she said slowly, "something that should never exist. A device that can destroy entire star systems in one strike." Rian felt the air leave his lungs. "Star systems? You mean planets? Whole planets?" "Yes." She said, "Planets, suns, everything. It can turn life into dust." Rian stared at her. The idea was too big, too heavy to believe. A weapon like that could wipe out not just cities, but worlds. Why would anyone make that? "Power," Alira said softly. "The Dominion wants to rule everything. They believe fear will make every world obey. They built the weapon in secret. Only a few of us knew. When I learned what it could do, I tried to stop them." "How?" Rian asked. "I destroyed the access codes," Alira said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Without those codes, the weapon cannot fire. The Dominion calls me a traitor because I kept those codes from them." Rian sank into the chair, trying to understand. He had fixed broken pipes, patched leaking airlocks, cleaned filters. Now he was listening to an alien woman who had defied an empire to stop a weapon that could erase suns. "Do you still have those codes?" he asked. Alira nodded. Slowly, "Yes, They are hidden inside me. Rian blinked. Inside you? Like in your memory? In my mind and in my blood, she said. My body carries the last key to unlock the weapon. If the Dominion captures me, they will take it from me. Then nothing will stop them. Rian sat back, the weight of her words pressing on him. He thought about Earth, far away, small and fragile. In the endless dark, if the Dominion got this weapon, no one would be safe. Not humans. Not any world. You're in here, Rian said. To this station. Why? Alira looked at him with calm eyes. Because humans are different. You are not part of the Dominion. You are not bound by their chains. You think in ways they do not understand. You fight in ways they cannot predict. Rian gave a short laugh. You make us sound special. We're just trying to survive like everyone else. That is why you are special, Alira said. Survival made you strong, made you clever. My people do not take risks. We follow rules. But you, Rian, you opened your door when I knocked, even knowing danger could follow. Rian shook his head. I opened it because you looked like you needed help. That is something the Dominion does not understand, Alira said. Compassion. Choice. They believe all beings serve or die. They do not see the power of those who refuse. Rian looked at her for a long moment. He had never thought of himself as powerful. He was just a maintenance worker. But tonight, hiding this woman, he felt something different, the sense that his actions mattered. We can't stay here, he said finally. They'll search again. If they find you, it's over. Alira stood, her glowing marks dimming as if to hide their light. I know, but where will we go? They control the docks. They control every corridor. Rian thought hard. The station had thousands of rooms, hundreds of passageways. But the Dominion soldiers had scanners and authority. Still, he knew places where scanners failed, places only workers went, narrow shafts, old cargo holds, maintenance tunnels. I'll get you out, he said. There's a freighter leaving in 2 days. If we can get you on board, you can disappear. Alira studied him. You would risk this for me. Rian gave a small shrug. If what you said is true, this isn't just about you. If they get that weapon, we all die sooner or later. For the first time, Alira's face softened. Her voice was quiet when she said, You are unlike anyone I have met. Before Rian could answer, a sharp sound cut through the silence. It was distant but clear, a door slamming open. Voices shouting in the harsh language of the Dominion. Alira's eyes flashed with fear. They are moving closer. Rian grabbed his tool bag and slung it over his shoulder. Then we moved too. Now, he opened the small storage locker and pulled out a gray jacket. Put this on. Keep the hood up. We'll use the maintenance paths. No scanners there. Alira slipped the jacket over her cloak. The hood shadowed her glowing skin, hiding the faint light. She looked almost human now, just taller and slimmer. Rian opened the floor panel and climbed down the narrow ladder into the darkness below. He turned back and held out a hand. Trust me, he said. Alira took his hand without a word and followed him down. The panel closed above them, and the room went silent. The ladder was narrow and old. The metal felt cold under Rian's hands as he climbed down into the maintenance shaft. The air smelled of oil and dust, and the hum of the station's main systems was louder here, like a low, endless drum. When his boots touched the bottom, he looked up. Alira was still above, moving carefully. The gray jacket covered her glowing skin, but a soft light still shimmered faintly from under the fabric. Rian reached up to steady her as she climbed down the last steps. Her movements were graceful, but the space was tight. Stay close, he said. His voice echoed faintly in the narrow tunnel. Alira nodded. She looked around, her eyes sharp and alert. The shaft stretched ahead like a dark throat, with pipes running along the walls and cables hanging like roots. This way, Rian said, picking up a small light from his tool bag. The beam cut through the darkness, landing on the metal floor. He started walking, his boots clanking softly. Alira followed without a sound, her steps light as shadows. The path twisted and turned. Sometimes they had to duck under pipes or squeeze through tight corners. Rian moved fast, his mind racing. He had walked these tunnels many times before, fixing broken systems, sealing leaks. They were like a secret map in his head. Behind him, Alira spoke in a low voice. "You know these pops well, better than anyone," Rian said. "When you work maintenance, you learn the parts no one else cares about. Dominion soldiers won't come down here. Too dirty for them." Alira tilted her head slightly. "Listening to the hum of machines, it feels alive." "It is," Rian said with a small smile. "This station breathes through these pipes. If they stop, everything dies." They walked in silence for a while. The tunnels seemed endless, like veins inside a giant body. Then Rian stopped at a junction. 3 paths stretched ahead, each marked by faded numbers. He pointed to the left. "That way goes to the power grid. Too dangerous. Middle one leads to the cargo bays. But it's sealed now. We take the right path, it'll bring us near the old storage decks." Alira nodded without question. She trusted him, and that thought gave Rian a strange feeling, like a weight and a strength at the same time. They moved again. The air grew warmer as they went deeper, the hum turning into a low vibration that ran through the floor. Rian wiped sweat from his forehead. He glanced back at Alira. Her face was calm, but her eyes were bright, scanning every shadow. Suddenly, a sharp sound cut through the noise of metallic clang. Far behind them, Rian froze. Alira stopped too, her body tense. "What was that?" Rian whispered. Alira listened, her head slightly tilted. "Not a machine," she said softly. "Footsteps." Rian's heart sank. The Dominion had found the shaft. "Run," he said. They ran. The tunnel shook with the sound of their boots hitting metal. Rian's light bounced wildly on the walls as they turned corners and ducked under pipes. Behind them, the clang of boots grew louder. "They know," Alira said, her voice calm even as she moved fast. "Keep running," Rian said. "We're close." They reached a heavy door with a rusty wheel. Rian dropped the light and grabbed the wheel, turning it with all his strength. It groaned but did not move at first. He pushed harder, his muscles burning. "Hurry," Alira said. Glancing back, the sound of footsteps was closer now, mixed with voices speaking in that harsh language. "I'm trying," Rian grunted. With a final twist, the wheel turned and the door cracked open. He shoved it wide enough for Alira to slip through, then followed and slammed it shut. They stood in darkness for a moment, breathing hard. Rian picked up his light and swept it around the space. It was an old storage deck, long forgotten. Dust covered the floor. Broken crates and rusted parts lay in piles. The ceiling was low, and pipes hung like vines. "They won't skin here," Rian said, catching his breath. "The metal's too thick." Alira stepped forward, her hood falling back. Her white hair glowed faintly in the dim light. She looked around the room, her eyes soft with something Rian could not name. "This place feels quiet," she said. "It's dead," Rian said. "No one's been here in years." Alira turned to him. "Then we have time to plan." Rian sat on an old crate and rubbed his face. His heart was still racing from the run. "Plan what?" "They're not stopping." "Alira, they're crawling all over this station. If they block the docks, the freighter won't matter." Alira walked closer. "Then we do not go through the docks. There are other ways." Rian looked at her. "Like what?" "Jump out an airlock and hope for the best." "No," Alira said. "But there is a signal tower on the upper ring. If we reach it, I can send a code to someone who will help us." "Who?" Rian asked. "My people," she said. "Not all serve the Dominion. Some fight it. They will come if they know where I am." Rian thought about it. The upper ring was far from here, past security zones and Dominion patrols. There would be almost impossible. "They'll be watching every path," he said. "If we're caught, we will not be caught," Alira said firmly. "You know this station better than anyone. That is why I came here. That is why I came." "To you?" Rian stared at her. "You didn't knock on my door by chance, did you?" Alira's eyes met his, glowing softly in the dark. "No, I learned about you before I came. A man who fixes what others cannot. A man who helps without asking why." Rian shook his head slowly. "You make me sound like some hero. I'm just trying to keep us alive. That is what heroes do," Alira said quietly. For a moment, the words hung between them, heavy and strange. Then Rian stood and tightened the straps on his tool bag. Signal tower. Then, he said, but we go. The long way, maintenance routes only. Alira pulled her hood back up, hiding the glow of her skin. Lead the way. As they moved toward the far end of the storage deck, Rian glanced back one last time. The shadows felt thicker now, like the station itself was holding its breath. Somewhere behind them, the Dominion soldiers were still searching, and Rian knew they were running out of time. The old storage deck faded into darkness as Rian and Alira moved through a narrow service corridor. At the far end, the floor creaked under their boots, and the pipes along the walls dripped with condensation. The smell of rust and damp metal filled the air. Rian led the way, his small light guiding them through the gloom. He kept glancing back to make sure Alira was close. Her hood was up, hiding the glow of her skin, but he could still see the faint shimmer of light where the fabric touched her hair. How far to the upper ring? She asked in a low voice. Far, Rian replied. We're in the lower decks. The tower is 10 levels above us, past at least 3 security zones. Alira was silent for a moment, then said, You sound worried. I am, Rian said honestly. Dominion soldiers are sweeping the station. They'll block all main routes soon. We'll need to climb the inner shafts to get past them. Alira tilted her head. Climb. Yeah, Rian said, pointing at the door ahead. Through there. Maintenance shaft goes all the way up to the upper ring. But it's not easy. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The shaft was massive, a vertical tunnel filled with pipes, cables, and narrow ladders that stretched upward into darkness. The sound of machinery roared in the distance, like the heart of the station beating strong. Alira stepped in beside him and looked up. Her eyes reflected the light like silver glass. This is high, she said softly. High and dangerous. Rian said, One wrong step and you fall a long way. Alira looked at him calmly. Then we do not step wrong. Rian gave a small grin. Easy for you to say. He hooked his tool bag across his back and grabbed the first rung of the ladder. The metal was cold and slick with oil. He started climbing, his boots pressing against the narrow steps. Above him, the shaft seemed endless, like a black throat-swallowing light. Alira followed without hesitation. She moved with a strange grace, her hands and feet finding each hold with silent precision. Rian could feel her presence close behind him, steady and calm. They climbed for minutes that felt like hours. The shaft grew hotter as they rose, steam hissing from the pipes. Sweat ran down Rian's face. His arms ached, but he kept moving. At last, they reached a small landing. Rian pulled himself up and sat down, breathing hard. Alira climbed up after him, her movements smooth. She didn't even look tired. You're not human, Rian said between breaths. You're too calm for this. Alira gave a faint smile. We are trained to move without fear. Good for you, Rian muttered, wiping his forehead. I wasn't trained for any of this. Alira looked at him. And yet, you keep going. Rian didn't answer. He stood and checked the next section of the shaft. It was narrower, the ladder almost vertical. Above, he could see faint lights from the next level. We keep climbing, he said. They started again. The shaft grew tighter, forcing them to squeeze between pipes. At one point, Rian had to twist sideways to pass a section where a cable bundle blocked the path. Alira slipped through easily, her body moving like water. Halfway up, Rian froze. A distant sound echoed down the shaft, a metallic clang, followed by voices. Dominion soldiers. They were coming up another shaft nearby. They're close, Rian whispered. Alira looked up. We must move faster. Not too fast, Rian said. If we make noise, they'll hear us. They climbed in silence, every movement slow and careful. The voices grew louder, bouncing off the metal walls. Rian's heart pounded. If the soldiers opened the wrong hatch, they would see them hanging there like targets. Finally, they reached another landing. Rian pulled himself up and helped Alira climb over. He pressed his ear against the hatch on the wall. He could hear boots marching on the other side. Security zone. He whispered, If we open this, we're done. Then we keep climbing. Alira said. Rian nodded and looked up. The shaft above was even narrower, and steam hissed from broken pipes. He swallowed hard. It gets worse from here. Then we will be strong, Alira said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with determination. They climbed again. The heat was like fire now, making the metal rungs burn against Rian's hands. His breath came in harsh gasps. He wanted to stop, but he didn't, not with soldiers. Below and danger above. After what felt like forever, they reached another hatch. Rian checked it. This one was quiet. He opened it slowly, peering out into a dark corridor lined with old pipes and broken panels. This is an old service deck, he said. No one comes here anymore. We could rest for a minute. They crawled out of the shaft and closed the hatch behind them. The corridor was silent except for the distant hum of engines. Dust floated in the air like tiny stars. Rian sank against the wall, his muscles trembling. Alira stood near him, her hood falling back. The glow of her skin lit the shadows softly. You risk much for me, she said. Rian looked at her. You risk more. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then a sharp sound broke the silence, a beep from Rian's wrist device. He lifted it and read the alert. His stomach turned cold. What is it? Alira asked. They've locked the main control hubs, Rian said. Security is on full lockdown. No doors will open without high-level codes. Alira's face stayed calm. Then we must find another way. Rian gave a short laugh. There is no other way. Unless, he trailed off, thinking hard. His mind raced through the station's layout, every shaft and vent he had ever crawled through. Then he saw it in his head, a forgotten route. One almost no one used anymore. The coolant tunnels. He said, they run near the signal tower. If we can get through them, we can reach the top without passing a single checkpoint. Alira nodded. Then we take the tunnels. Rian shook his head. They're dangerous, freezing cold. If the pressure shifts, we could be crushed. Alira stepped closer, her eyes shining in the dim light. We do not have a choice. Rian stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Coolant tunnels it is. But once we're in, there's no turning back. Alira pulled her hood up again. Then we keep moving forward. Rian pushed himself up, feeling the weight of the moment. They were deep in the heart of the station now, hunted and alone, climbing toward a signal tower that might be their only hope. And with every step, the wall seemed to whisper the same truth. Time was running out. Rian and Alira stood at the entrance of the coolant tunnels. A thin metal door separated them from the narrow passage beyond. The cold air flowed out like a breath from deep inside the station. Sharp and biting, Rian pulled his jacket tighter around him and glanced at Alira. Her skin, which usually gave off a soft glow, seemed pale in the cold light. This way, Rian said, pushing the door open. The tunnel was narrow and long. Pipes ran along the walls and ceiling, dripping with frozen water. The floor was slippery with ice. The hum of the coolant system was louder here, like a frozen river rushing through metal veins. Alira moved carefully, her boots barely making a sound on the ice. Rian followed, stepping slowly to avoid slipping. The cold air made it hard to breathe. Why do you call this place dangerous? Alira asked softly. Rian pointed at a large pipe above their heads. If pressure builds too much, these pipes can burst. When that happens, the freezing liquid inside sprays everywhere. It can freeze a man in seconds. Alira nodded. Then, we must be careful. They walked deeper into the tunnel. The cold grew stronger, making their breath visible like small clouds. The light from Rian's lamp bounced off the ice, creating sharp shadows. After some time, the tunnel split in two directions. Rian checked his map, which he had printed from the station's old files. Left leads to a storage area. Right leads closer to the tower, he said. We take right. Alira followed without hesitation. The tunnel grew tighter. Pipes hung lower, forcing them to bend down. The ice thickened, making every step a test of balance. Suddenly, there was a sharp hiss. Rian looked up just in time to see a thin crack running along one of the large pipes. Pressure is rising, he said quickly. We need to move before it bursts. Alira's eyes widened. Faster. They hurried down the tunnel. The hiss grew louder, turning into a loud whistle. Rian felt the cold air rush past him like a knife. A sudden explosion of ice and coolant sprayed from the pipe ahead. Rian dived to the side just as a freezing mist filled the tunnel. Alira shouted but kept moving forward, dodging the frozen spray. Rian caught up, his clothes stiff with cold. That was close. Alira looked at the broken pipe. We cannot stay here. They moved on, their faces numb from the cold. The tunnel was silent again, except for the soft drip of melting ice. After a while, the tunnel opened into a larger room. The walls were covered with thick frost, and large machines hummed. Quietly, Rian pulled out his map again. This is the old coolant control room. If we can find the control panel, we might reduce the pressure. Alira's eyes sparkled. Good idea. They searched the room carefully. Machines towered over them, some blinking softly, others silent. The cold was almost unbearable. Finally, Rian found the control panel. The screen flickered weakly. It's old, but it still works, Rian said. He pressed a few buttons. The hum of the coolant system slowed, and the pressure warning light turned off. Alira smiled. You saved us, Rian shrugged. Just a lucky guess. They stayed in the room for a moment to warm up. Then, with the pressure stable, they moved on. The tunnel led higher now, closer to the upper ring. Rian's light caught the faint outline of a ladder. That ladder goes straight to the signal tower. He said, almost there. Alira climbed. First, her hands steady on the cold metal rungs. Rian followed, his muscles tired but determined. At the top, they stepped out into a small room filled with antennas and screens. The view showed the vast station glowing under distant stars. Alira walked to the main console. I can send the signal now. Rian watched as she typed commands quickly. The console beeped. In a light flashed green dot, the message was sent. Help was coming. Suddenly, an alarm sounded. Red lights flashed. They found us, Rian said. Alira grabbed his arm. We hold here. We cannot let them stop the signal. Rian nodded. They prepared to defend the tower as the footsteps of approaching soldiers echoed outside. The red alarm lights flashed across the signal tower room, casting harsh shadows on the walls. The sound of pounding boots echoed in the narrow corridor outside. Rian and Alira exchanged a quick glance, their faces set with determination. They're almost here, Rian said, gripping a metal rod he found nearby. It was heavy, but better than nothing. Alira stood beside him, her eyes glowing softly. We must protect the signal until help arrives. The door shook as the Dominion soldiers tried to force it open. A harsh voice shouted commands from outside. Rian took a deep breath and moved to the control panel, checking the status of the message. The screen showed it was still sending. Help was on the way. But how soon? The door burst open with a loud crash. Soldiers flooded into the room, weapons ready. Rian swung the metal rod at the nearest soldier, hitting his arm and making him drop his weapon. Alira moved swiftly, using her glowing hands to send a shock of energy that pushed the soldiers back against the wall. The fight was fierce but quick. Rian used his strength and quick thinking, while Alira's strange powers surprised the soldiers. Slowly, they pushed the soldiers out of the room, blocking the door behind them with a heavy console. Breathing hard, Rian looked at Alira. How long can we hold them? As long as we must, she said calmly. Minutes passed like hours. The sound of footsteps outside never stopped. Then, a distant rumble shook the station. Rian's eyes widened. Is that? A group of figures appeared at the doorway. Dressed in black armor with symbols unlike the Dominions, they moved quickly, cutting down the soldiers with silent precision. Alira smiled. My people. The newcomers fought fiercely, driving the Dominion soldiers back within moments. The room was quiet except for heavy breathing and the distant hum of the station. Rian wiped sweat from his forehead. You really had allies? Alira nodded. There are many who do not agree with the Dominion's rule. They fight for freedom. One of the newcomers approached them. We received your signal. We came as fast as we could. Rian looked around the room. The signal tower was safe, the message sent. Hope felt real again. Alira turned to him. Thank you for saving me, for helping me reach this moment. Rian smiled. Tired but happy, you saved me too. I never thought my life would change like this. Outside, the station's lights began to flicker as the new forces took control. The Dominion soldiers retreated, defeated. Rian and Alira stood together, watching the stars through the tower's windows. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, it felt full of possibility.